Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Luminary Podcast. I am your host, Annie Perry. I have a really special episode for you guys today, and I just want to take a moment to introduce our guests before we jump into the episode. Now, this episode was really born from the conversations that I have had with all of you guys, with the listeners over the last 2.5 years. And we cover a lot of the questions about the confusion and the feelings that you have going through a spiritual awakening while you're still living in a 3D world, while you're still expected to get up every day, to go to work, and to also be learning about the universe and remembering the truth of who you are, that you are a divine cosmic fractal of light, and you are not just a school teacher. You are not just a podcaster. You are so much more than that. And it can be a very jarring experience. At the beginning of my psychic journey, and when I first started offering psychic sessions, this was back in 2021. I don't do sessions anymore, but back when I first started, I felt that it was going to be something really, really special and that it was going to change my life. And I have been lucky enough to have been introduced to both of our guests the same week that I became a professional psychic and started doing readings. In fact, one of these guests you know well, it is Alicia Bryan, who has been our galactic co-host and the interviewer. Today, you're going to experience Alicia in an entirely new way. She is smart as hell, and this woman has so much wisdom. She has a very strong Pleiadian energy about her, and we always joke about how Pleiadian she is. And it's a privilege and an honor not to just know her, but to have been able to work with her before, and of course, to have her as a guest on the podcast. So you're going to be able to receive a lot of her wisdom. She is being interviewed this time, and it's a privilege. It really, really is. You're going to really receive the wisdom from her. And I was blown away by a lot of the answers that she brought forward. Our other guest today has not been on our podcast before, and yet I feel the deepest soul connection to Samantha Darwak. She is such a special fractal of the Christ consciousness. In fact, I call her Sananda lovingly because she has so much Christ light energy radiating from her heart chakra at all times. It is just phenomenal to be in her presence, to have conversations with her, to be her friend, and of course, to have her here on the podcast, offering up her heart and her wisdom and her story and her authenticity. I am so, so grateful. And I think you guys are going to really, really enjoy this episode. So without further ado, please welcome Alicia Bryan and Samantha Darwak. Perfect. Oh man, I am so excited to be here with you guys. I'm already just like, I feel the energy just starting to kind of like bubble out of me. It feels so cool. It feels so good to have this conversation with you guys. I've actually never had two guests at one time on my podcast, so it's going to be really fun to just have a chat. And most of the listeners are women, and women kind of in that 20 to like 45, 50 age range. And they are all star seeds, light workers, people who feel some sort of connection with not just the spiritual world, but definitely with the galactic world. But they also have jobs and have families and have to-do lists, and they have to go to the grocery store, and they have to meal prep, and they have to go to the gym and like do all of the things that we do here on Earth to live in this 3D reality. And something that I love about the two of you and what I've gotten to know about you guys over the years is that you guys like human and alien at the same time very, very well. Now, I don't know if you always feel that you do, but as an outsider looking in, I'm like, they're out with their friends, like they're on their trips, like it just, you have your jobs and your different careers and like your different aspirations for your 3D life. But then on like the drop of a hat, we can go into a super galactic conversation and like you guys are right there with me. So my first question for you guys is I would love to know what your like spiritual awakening stories are. Were you guys, I know a little bit about Alicia's, but were you guys like, did you grow up in a home where people talk about spirituality? You guys are familiar with my story. I grew up a very, very like black and white, very much religion until my spiritual awakening. And then it was like a 180 in the opposite direction. And I would just love to know, like, where did you guys start with this? Because you seem so integrated as far as the 3D and 5D. And compared to what I see a lot of starseed struggling with is to integrate the two of those. So maybe Sam, if you want to go first and talk about like where did it start?
Yeah. So for the listeners at home who don't know, me and Alicia grew up together and we've known each other since we were 5 years old. But I grew up in a family where we went to church on Sundays, we went to Sunday school, and eventually that kind of fell off, but we did have a religious faith-based background. But my family was very into the woo-woo. Um, Growing up as a kid, really liked anything about paranormal activity and ghosts and anything witchy. I like playing with like twigs and rocks in the dirt. And as I got older, that then shaped into more of a spiritual essence than a church-based religious essence. And the spiritual awakening really hit fast forward during COVID years, 2020, I would say. And it really got started with you, Annie, and also me and Alicia had our little almost like weekly spiritual powwows and breakdowns about what the heck is going on. And it all happened so quick.
Mhm.
But that is the baseline of that.
I love that. What about you, Alicia?
Yeah, so kind of similar. I mean, I grew up going to church, but it wasn't like it happened, but it wasn't like the big thing that happened that week. And also, I was always very like encouraged to ask questions and be interested in different things and like have my own opinions. And you both know my mom, like she's very opinionated and she's very interested in a lot of different things. And I think it was just through conversation at home when I was curious about things like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And then, very much like Sam, like I was really into paranormal stuff, just like on TV. I feel like there was a lot on TV growing up. There was a lot of like psychics or mediums with shows. And so, like, I grew up watching that stuff. And I was always just like really curious about the unknown. Um, I think Sam and I are alike in that way too. Like, what's more exciting than the thing you don't know and the thing you can find out? And like, let's ask as many questions as possible and get everyone else's
Mhm.
opinion. So, yeah, I think like from there, it plateaued a little bit. And during the pandemic, um, stuff kind of got like really real for everyone. I think people like stepped back and really took a look at like, what are we doing? What's the bigger purpose? And
Mhm.
threw us into a little bit of an existential crisis. But yeah, that's when we met you, Annie. And yeah, we would have our weekly powwows and we started meeting with you and diving into everything and learning more about ourselves. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah. I remember, I think Alicia had classes or did sessions with you, Annie,
Mhm.
and then was like, you need to do this. You need to meet Annie. You need to talk to her. You will love this. And then I had my first session with you, and it was just eye-opening and
Yeah.
wonderful. And we convened and we're like, oh my God. And it really just started
Yeah.
the hole. That was
Yeah, after I had my first session, oh, sorry, Annie.
No, go ahead.
After I had my first session and we talked about a lot of things, and you had given me a link to like past life regression meditation, and you were like, I think this is where some of your strong suits lie, like try this meditation and see what happens. And so I went and tried it, like literally had nothing else to do, and I'm just like sitting on my couch having a complete out of body experience. And I got out of it and I was just sitting there and I was like, all right, I need to call Sam and then I need to call my mom, because that was like the wildest thing that ever happened. And Sam was like, well, I have to, all right, well, I'm going to make an appointment with her, because how can you not understand? Like, I feel like we're very much like, I go through something, she goes through something, and like we have to experience the same type of thing. And I think that really like got the ball rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you guys have had a lot of past lives together?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever they were. I mean, they had to have happened.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Like a long time. And what's interesting is I've never been on a call with both of you guys. Obviously, like when we met up, it was always one to one.
Right.
Now that you guys are here together, your energy, like I can see this like thread together starting to stretch across time. So yeah, I think you guys have been traveling together for a really long time. I do want to go back to Alicia's mom and just say that I am so obsessed with Alicia's mom. I think about her all the time. I know she's gonna watch this, so shout out, Mary. I just love you.
She's gonna love it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She just sends me like the nicest messages, and like she makes a point of like listening to all of this. And for me, as someone who like my mom is just starting to come around to all of this, and I would say in the last like 3 or 4 months, she's had the most breakthroughs with like understanding what the quantum field is, and that manifestation could be real. She's still kind of, feeling it out. So I'm curious just about like the family dynamics. Like it sounds like we all like went to church at some point, and that was kind of like 90s baby, early 2000s, like just what people did. You like go to church, and that's kind of like the spiritual touch point. But as far as like your guys' families, what's the like spiritual dynamic now? Like what are people into now? That feels supportive and feels like interesting and like progression for you guys.
Do you want to take it away, Leash?
Sure. I feel like I kind of have a short answer on that. Like my mom still considers herself a Catholic, and it's not that I don't, but I've kind of like moved away from that. I feel like there's like a big umbrella on top of that, right? And there's a lot of things too that made people step back and go, "Ooh, I don't know if I love that." So I think like, spirituality changed for a lot of people, and I think that's where my mom lies. And again, she just always asked a lot of questions, and she's always had a lot of opinions, and that's always been like okay in our house. And um my dad is kind of, he does his own thing. Like he has his beliefs. He's very interested in what like the unknown is and how he can find out more about that. I don't think he seeks it out as much as I do, but I think growing up, like there were a lot of documentaries on TV or like History Channel or Science Channel. And um, I think it's just like fascinating to all of us, like as a family. My sister, not so much, but she's always been like open to it. We had like medium readings together, and it was always cool and exciting. And it was definitely something that we would have been able to like talk about as a family, and it probably would have been very exciting to all of us. So yeah, I would say I'm the most spiritual person in my family, outwardly anyway, but yeah, on different levels we're all spiritual. Yeah.
I have such an interesting, I would say, family dynamic with the spiritual. My mom loves to hear about it all. She will integrate little things here and there in her own way. And she's fascinated by it, but it's almost like she gets it trickled down through me. And my sister is so supportive. For my birthday is at the end of January, and she actually got me a little like witchy crystal fairy birthday present. So she knows that it's something I'm into, and so she's there to listen to me and hear me. My dad and my brother, I realized I had to work on my verbiage when I speak to them. And I realized that if I talked with him the way I talked with you both, it's just over their head and they almost put up a little bit of a wall to it. So I realized if I changed certain phrases here or there or demystified things a bit, then it catches their intrigue. And they're like, okay. Like last night, for example, I had a really nice conversation with my dad, and I was like, Dad, let's talk about your aura color. Like, let's get into this. And he was like, please tell me more, please. So that's kind of how my family dynamic is around the spirituality stuff.
I love that. My yeah, my family has been like slowly my influence has started to spread, and I'm just starting to see like the fruits of my labor, you know, because for a long time, especially like 2020, 2021, everything was so intense. You know, when your sister is like, for them, the experience was like our sister went on this trip, she got sick, she came back and said she was like different, and then she moved away. And when she came back from living away from us for 2 years, she like walked out of the desert and was like, I'm a psychic and that's what I do now. And so for them it was just like this really jarring experience of like, what the hell are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? What have you been up to? So taken the last 2 years since I did move closer to them, and since I did start working as a psychic, for them to start picking up on things. But what's been really cool the last 3 6 months is one of my sisters starts to feel ascension symptoms. She starts to ask me about them. She's like, I'm having like weird headaches. I'm having, like I just feel really tired at random moments, and nothing is physically wrong with her. And so we'll talk about ascension symptoms. Or like my mom started listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza, and her like eyes are like sparkling now. And she's like, there's a whole universe out there that I had no idea about. And I guess I know from talking to a lot of people in the community that when you are the spiritual person in your family and you kind of start out as like the black sheep, sometimes it doesn't go over so well. That was definitely like one of the archetypes that I was carrying for a long time, is being like the black sheep, the weirdo, the outcast. And then like change starts to happen. And so I know a lot of people feel like their family doesn't understand them. And I guess just from hearing your guys' experiences is like, just like Alicia said, like everyone has their own spirituality. Like everyone has their own spot where they're at, and it develops and it grows and it changes over time. So I would like to know, and we can start with Alicia, like what are your favorite like 5D things? Like what do you love about spirituality? What do you like, what's on your Instagram feed? Like what are we gonna find there on your floor? Like what are all your favorite things that you're into?
I feel like it's always evolving. I think it changes. It I think it can go in spirituality and then some people keep it outside, but like I hold astrology very near and dear to my heart. I think it's amazing that the planets can tell us what's going on, and that's a battle that Sam and I have with people we know all the time, trying to say like this is what this means, whatever. In a way, I think I really enjoy that everything seems like a science to me, but that's a whole different topic. There's a lot of like spiritual like medicine on my feed. I love Joe Dispenza. I've read his books. Like I really like some of the stuff that they offer on Gaia. At the same time, past life stuff. And I don't know. I'm trying to think like what I think it's just like really just a big combination of all of the things that we always talk about. And I think like it changes when like I listen to one of your podcasts and it's on something that I am not familiar with, right? Like, and then my feed is all new with something that I'm diving into, and I'm calling Sam, like, do you know about this? What do you think about this? Like, but yeah, I think the constant in there is probably around like herbs, medicine, like stuff like that throughout spirituality and astrology.
Hmm. I am so excited for this question because I have been waiting for a moment to have a platform to say that me and SZA and Janae Aiko are on the same algorithm on Instagram. Every time I have one of my little spiritual posts that pop up, they've already liked it, and I'm like, I see you, girlfriend. Yes. Um, but on my Instagram and my Pinterest feeds, a lot of my like spiritual stuff comes up, and it's always nature based and
Mhm.
tree hugging, mushroom, fairy loving posts. And there's some memes with like people like the light bodies where their whole physical body is just like bright white light and like this vortex of earth, and that's normally what's popping up on my stuff.
With a fair share of, I hate to use the word alien, but you know,
Yeah.
there's a fair share of like what's going on, like, and it's not like, oh, UFO, UAP spotted over Nevada, like that's not what's on my feed.
Mhm.
It's just like kind of diving into like, what is it? Who are they? What's going
Mhm.
on? Like,
Mhm.
I'm not really like honestly, it's really a lot of females. Like it's creators like you, Annie, that like are downloading this information, or like this is their job, this is their practice,
Mhm.
and they talk about it in a much different way than like, you know, the government or scientists would.
Mhm. And I think social media aside, my favorite aspect of pulling together the 5D into the 3D is just the mindset that comes with it, and just being weird, and not weird in a bad way, just weird in a great way. Like, it's so nice to be surrounded by people who can be like, oh my God, go outside and look at the moon. It's amazing. Or just sharing like those little tidbits, and also knowing that you can be detached, but it's not in an unhealthy way. It's this life is all laid out ahead of us, and it's ours for the taking, and it's already planned, and it's enmeshed, and it's just it is what it is in the best way possible. I think having that headspace that comes along with the spiritual journey, it's comforting.
Mhm.
And because it you see people get so caught up in the day-to-day nitty-gritty things, and it's hard to explain the mindset to someone else who hasn't experienced a spiritual awakening, for lack of
Mhm.
a better phrase, to be like,
Mhm.
it's okay. It's all going to work out. We can just pull ourselves out of it. Just take a deep breath and it's all good.
What are some of your favorite things about like the 3D world? And then I want to like go deeper into like the enmeshment, like exactly what you're
Mhm,
talking about, Sam, of like,
mhm,
like how things merge and how we live in a 3D world. And I personally have gone through like a 3D renaissance over the last 6 months, and I'm just obsessed with this place. Like I love all the physical crap. I just
mhm,
love it. And I love all of the trends, and I love me some Taylor Swift, and like I'm just all in. And that was kind of at the behest of my guides, who were like, it's so easy for me to just like leave my body and go talk to all these beings all over the place, and like to do that all the time. And it is my service to like bridge the two worlds. So I love that, and very I'll always probably be the most spiritual nerd in the room. And I love that for me. But at the same time, my guides were like, it's okay to like indulge in this world that you came to be a part of. So like
Mhm.
what do you guys love right now about the 3D world? Like what are you obsessed with?
Well, I will say that because I struggled with this for a while, and I think a lot of people that enter spirituality do, or they have some sort of spiritual awakening, and you're like, then what is all this for? And then you get to a place of, well, I can enjoy all these things. They wouldn't exist if I wasn't supposed to enjoy them, or you know what I mean? Like they weren't supposed to be part of my life. So, yeah, I love a material good. I love like a quality, a quality purchase. It's that like instant dopamine hit, right? Like, and those are things like the emotions that we experience here in the 3D. It's, from what I've heard, the only place that you can really experience this. And I think, like obviously food and music and all of that, but I think it really comes down to this huge underlying thing of what I really enjoy as a human. And sometimes it can be awful, but I think Sam and I really live in this feeling your emotions for what they are and like living in them and living in your body and feeling all the things that come with it. Because I don't think that society teaches us to really feel those things and question what do they mean. And it's just recently, people started thinking about mental health and how your brain connects to your body. So I think even though there's all those little things, I think it's the emotions that come with it that I really love experiencing as a human. And certain days can be so hard, right? Or you can struggle with depression or anxiety. But when you see the other side of that, it's like, it's kind of an amazing thing to feel all these things and just be like this, I hate to say, bag of bones, but really, like, that's really, I just feel like you're in this one body, but you can feel like this whole spectrum of things and things you really don't even understand. So yeah, I love the little things, but I definitely love the emotions of being in the 3D.
The emotions in the 3D are so great and wonderful. I agree. But emotions aside, because I'm filled with them 24/7. I lately, Annie and I have been nonstop messaging about books. Books. That has been my recent 3D obsession. I started when I was younger, I read all the time. I actually, when I was younger, got grounded from reading because I was caught at 3 a.m. reading like a book night, and I had to go to school. I was in like middle school. So books have been like a resurgence of mine, and I've been heavily invested in the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelsey family shenanigans. And I love a good just pop culture nugget.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
briefing earlier on Jesse James Decker and like what is going on in your life. Just those little I'm not a huge shopper, but any type of like facial, manicure, pedicure, those types of things. Those are just amazing 3D wonders that I'm so lucky that we get to experience.
Yes. Okay, yes to literally everything. Let's go back to books. Because when I first texted Alicia and I was like, Alicia, like me and Sam have been talking nonstop. And like we've always kind of talked like here and there, Sam, but we were talking like nonstop about books that we're into. We like a lot of the same fiction books, and it's like a whole world. And it just happened to be that I think you and I were having this time in our life where we felt like there was enough, I don't know, space to like go back and do some of those things because my life has been so busy for the past, 3.5 years. And so over the last few months, I've actually had time to go back into that. And when I first texted Alicia, I was like, we've been talking like so much about books. Like, what do you think about like us doing a podcast episode like all together? And I think in my mind at the time, I was like, I just really want to talk to Sam about all these books. If we don't talk every day about them. So I love that. Yeah, pop culture nuggets. I am obsessed with like doing these little psychic readings on all of the little like pop culture dynamics
I
and
love that.
yeah, like what I can glean out of it. I always post it on my Instagram, and I definitely second guess myself. I'm like, no one wants to hear about this. And once I post it, I get so many messages back about it. People just love learning those random facts. I mean, if I really wanted to like get big, I would just post random spiritual facts. So yeah, I love that so much. And something else that I really admire about you guys is that you guys have always prioritized, at least in my experience with you, you guys have always prioritized like a healthy social life. You guys have this amazing friend group. Obviously I know you guys and also Deanna, and you guys have this like amazing friend group. And I know some of you guys live near each other and some live far, but you have like Alicia has her partner. And so when it comes to like relationships in the 3D and prioritizing like that kind of interaction and not getting too like in our heads or too introverted, which is really really easy for star seeds, how do you guys like prioritize that, and like what does it mean to you? If you want to go first, Sam.
I feel like over the years, we are lucky to have the group of girlfriends that we do, and just in even broader like support system, that we all can show up authentically as ourselves. And we're all very different. And like the majority of our friend group, we've grown up together. We have known each other since we were in preschool. We're from a small town in upstate New York. And I feel like for myself, I don't want to speak for Alicia, but I have been able to show myself through this process. So it's not something that's new to them. They have got to see the little bits and pieces throughout time. They've gotten to see, they all know their birth charts for astrology. They know, they will come to us if they're like, what is going on with the planets? Like shit has hit the fan. And last year we had a Valentine's Day party, our group of girlfriends, and we each brought like little trinkets, and I got everyone a personalized crystal for them for what the phase that they were in their life. So I think just those little moments of getting to open up and show who I am with the spiritual side of things, it's also made them more receptive. And some of them are spiritual themselves in their own way, but it's become a really nice supportive network among our girlfriends that I value.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. And Annie, you're gonna laugh. Just Sam brought the crystals for everyone, and I made everyone friendship bracelets. I did the most Pleiadian thing possible. They were rainbow friendshendship bracelets.
They were rainbow.
Personalized rainbow friendship bracelets. Yeah. And everyone expected that. Because it's honestly it's on par. But I think that yeah, no, everything Sam said rings true. I think we are lucky to always have this support system, right? Where we've always been able to essentially be ourselves, and it's a very safe space because we have known each other since almost infancy, and like we've known each other's families for a long time. So it's like you feel like you've already bared your soul to people, so it's easier to show them new parts of you or parts that have grown. And that doesn't mean that you might not get a weird look every once in a while and they're like, what is that? Like, what is she talking? But really, they don't have to understand to be like, this is my friend. I support them. I want to know what they're interested in. And I think that's what really keeps us all like close together and tight, and just really being like curious about one another. And, my partner, Ryan, he definitely wasn't in this world. And Sam and I kind of like giggled about it when I met him, because like I just felt like perhaps part of his journey is like this might be a little wake up call, and it doesn't mean that his experience looks like my experience, but it's like a whole new world. And it doesn't mean it becomes his thing, but he's very receptive to like learning about things that he doesn't know about. And slowly over time he has questions, he's interested, and I'm like, right, like who wouldn't? But there are a lot of people that wouldn't be interested, and so it's just nice to have that support from everyone to be able to like openly be yourself, and Sam and I be able to have our conversations or like be around my family and just like talk about the normal things. Like oh, I
Mhm.
think I was in this past life, and no one be like, hold on, you're so weird. What's going on? Everyone's like, oh, okay, here she goes. Go ahead. Tell us
Mhm.
what you're talking about.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean they understand it, but they're all like so supportive. And yeah, in time, they all want to know the same things about themselves, even if they don't believe it or whatever, like, so I think it's interesting, but everyone is super supportive about it.
Mhm. And I think that we're lucky. I know not everyone has this experience,
Hmm.
but we did a good job of surrounding ourselves with curious people and just open-minded people who
Yeah,
don't mind us being us.
yeah, I agree.
And you guys are amazing. So who would not want to be around you guys all the time? I think if I still lived on the East Coast, I would be coming over to visit you all the time.
We would be having this podcast on a couch with a cup of tea
Oh
in
my
our
God,
pajamas.
someday,
I
someday,
can't
and
wait.
all matching sweatsuits with wine glasses
Mhm.
someday. It's a vision
Mhm.
I have.
Mhm.
I love that. I'm there for sure, 100%. What have been some of the more difficult experiences that you've had as you've gone through your awakening? It sounds like it accelerated a lot in 2020, and now we're 4 years in. What have been some of the more like difficult experiences you guys have had integrating and like having a session with a psychic and being told all this quantum information, then it's like you have to go to work the next day and like stare at a computer,
Mm.
write emails. And so sometimes it can be a little jarring. I'm curious, like, what your guys's like, what have you struggled with, honestly? Just to keep it real
Mhm.
for those out there who are probably
Yeah.
struggling with something really similar and just need to know that they're not alone.
Yeah, I think it took us a long time. I know because we like kind of went through this experience together. Um, it took us a long time, and I don't think we've figured it out quite yet to find a balance really of like how to not to get caught up in that 5D conversation
Mhm.
all the time, or like, you know, e- it's life changing to have some of these conversations, and then you question, what does the stuff in your everyday 3D life mean? And it's
Mhm.
really like they have to be together and they have to be separate at the same time, because like you're here in this existence on this plane and it's not changing.
Mhm.
Um so I think, yeah, getting up and looking at a computer some days and answering emails about something that has nothing to do with spirituality is a drag. But then again, it can bring a lot of joy into my life to do those 3D things and to be like, quote unquote, normal, or have a normal, like, human day.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, but I think it took us a long time. And I think there were a lot of months full of phone calls of how do we separate these two things, and
Mhm.
um also not feeling isolated and becoming this new spiritual person, or it being a bigger part of our lives, and
Mhm.
being able to balance that with like, okay, but this weekend I'm also going to like go to a bar with my friends or go out to eat with my friends and like have a
Mhm.
few drinks and talk about normal everyday stuff.
Mhm. And I agree with Alicia wholeheartedly. I think there are also times where it's just heavy. And
Hmm.
we've had conversations lately like, what is the point? We not of spirituality, just of lessons that come with it.
Sure.
So when I started my spiritual awakening, I also started going back to therapy. And there was a lot of that integrative work together and just periods of, okay, well, I need to work on XYZ. These are the lessons that are coming up. These are my triggers for whatever reasons. And how am I going to then work on that, integrate it, and move forward? And just sometimes after a while, you're like, well, I think I'm doing good. I think I'm overcoming these. Like, why do these triggers keep popping up? Because I think I'm passing the test, quote unquote. And it can get frustrating and draining from time to time, especially if you keep hitting issues with the same themes over and over. And it definitely can be defeating. Like, as much as it's all wonderful that I wouldn't choose any differently. Like, I love the person that I've become through this journey. But there are some days that I just lay on the couch and I'm like, you pull the blanket up and we're like, okay, we're going to just not think about anything today.
And I think what can be really difficult for some people too is Sam and I tend to do things like jump right in, don't look back. We're already doing it, so keep going. And it can get really intense. And I know I forget that, like, it's not for everyone. It doesn't look the same for everyone. But I always like encourage people to get through that heavy, weird, scary part, because I see sometimes like brains malfunctioning when you talk about certain things with people who have never really talked about this stuff before. And I'm like, that's okay. You're not supposed to understand it all. But like, you may get a bit of information that triggers something in your brain that you're like, wait, I feel like I should know more about that. Or like, I feel like that resonates with me. And it's not digesting it all at once. Like, there are times that I listen to your podcast, Annie, and I'm like, oh my God, like my brain's gonna explode because she's just like, oh, this information, like how could I take it all in? Like, that's also not the point. Like, I can go listen to it again, and also like I will take from it what I need to take from it. And like, I think sometimes it can be overwhelming to just like enter this spiritual era of your life or get into a spiritual awakening. And it's like, it doesn't look like anything really. Like, no one can tell you what it's going to look like because you're going to do it the way you want.
And the overwhelming aspect of it, I have learned that my personality, I sometimes tend to get so excited about things that I want to shove it down someone's throat,
Yeah,
especially if I know that it would benefit you or if you need it or if it would help. And I'm like, hello, this is my brand new magical world. Step into it with me. And sometimes that approach hasn't done well, more so for family, where I'm like, I just want to like pull you up here and be on my page with me and have you understand me this way. And you can look at yourself differently if you just step over here a little bit. And I've learned that that approach doesn't work for everyone. And I've had to change the way I have gone about talking about it with different people just so that it can be digestible.
Yeah. And I think there is a fear too of like people are afraid of the heavy sometimes, right? Like, we're like kind of taught societally to like run from that heavy stuff, like just be light, be fun. But I think a lot of people don't understand that like once you walk through that heavy, it's not the same type of heaviness anymore. There's like a lightness that comes right behind it. And then you can move through life with like, well, like the universe is universing today. So tomorrow will be better.
I'm gonna take that quote. The universe is universing today.
I text that to Sam all the time. I'm like, the universe is doing its thing. That's all I can say.
I think me and Sam have the same urge, like when we learn something and you want to, as Sam has said, shove it down people's throat. I was just thinking like that's why I have a podcast. So
I'm the same. Yeah.
Just like all this quantum information, and then it can, go to whoever wants to take it. But it is so true, and it is so relatable that it's like sometimes there is the heaviness of just like the human experience, and it can be so wrapped up in the 3D things, and it's usually triggered by the 3D things that we have to work through every day. And like, thank you, Sam, for mentioning like therapy and that they were intertwined. Those experiences for you were going hand in hand. And I think what so much of humanity is kind of like, driving towards, unbeknownst to a lot of them, is that there really is no separation. And
Hmm.
such a hard concept for us to understand because we live in the most dense reality. And
Hmm.
there really is no separation. So, like the 3D, there is a mesh point with the 5D and the spirituality and our mental health and our body and like the work that we do and the relationships that we're in and the things that we buy, all of them have this mesh point within. And so for you guys, how do you like approach the mesh point on an everyday basis? Like what does your day to day look like? Do you try to create like containers for like, my spiritual practice and doing this and this in the morning and then at work? Or do you find that more often than not, they're kind of bleeding into each other and that's okay too? Maybe if you want to take that one, Alicia.
Yeah, I think mine, unbeknownst to me, has always existed together. Even before I was, would say I was spiritual or understood what that meant. I think there was always some sort of like little manifestation happening, or like growing up, I used to like dream up scenarios, like visualize scenarios as I was going to sleep. And they were small things, I mean, teenage things, but they all came true. And like sometimes I look back and I'm like, you were just like manifesting left and right, and you really didn't know what was going on. And I just thought I was like lucky, but I think it's always kind of existed together for me. And I totally agree with you both. Like when I get excited about something, I want other people to know about it. So I think I've always just existed in this place of, oh, did you hear about this? Because I've been doing it. And I think like maybe you should try it if you like this
Hmm.
stuff, because like it's so cool and so fun, and like you don't know what could happen. And um I think for some people it works to keep it separate. But I mean, just this morning I went to the gym and went in the sauna, and sauna was empty, and I was like, I will be meditating in here for the next 15 minutes and visualizing and talking to your guides, like whatever that looks like for you, or putting a crystal in your pocket, or having some sort of gemstone jewelry. Or I think it really exists hand in hand. Like even if people think it's really separate, like you said, it's all around us, really.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I feel like there's before spiritual awakening and then after spiritual awakening. And in the after, everything really and to be fair, I feel like growing up, Alicia and I both, because we were into different things, that just it made sense. So it was really always just who we were. But
Hmm.
now in my day to day, I do have some spiritual practices that I do. Um, I love being like one with the earth, nature, grounding. I like lately work has been stressful, and I went for a hike yesterday. It's nice weather up here, so I was able to get outside, and I'm like, in those moments, I'm able to just do some breath work and clear my energetic field and just become come back to myself almost. Um, there are other little things I do, like most nights before bed, I I pray, but it's so funny. I'll start my prayers and I'm like, Dear Lord, guides, God, angels, whoever's out there, whoever's listening, want to tune in. Um, but yeah, I tend to do other little things as well. Like Alicia said, like keep some crystals on me from time to time, or just like I like to make sure like I'm in tune with myself, which I know
Hmm.
that is it's just taking a moment to be like, okay, where are we? Like, let's check where we're at and where our energy is. It's more knowing your energetic field and the
Hmm.
others around you, I think is an important tool to just make
Hmm.
sure everything's kosher.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think having like those support systems too, like you guys have cultivated a really beautiful support system as we've been talking about, family and friends and places where you feel like you can be yourself. And relationships are going to be huge this year, and really all the way from 2024 into 2028. People are going to be really experiencing relationships, whether it is romantic or friendships, like all of those connections are coming online as we continue to go through these heart chakra activations. And there's going to be so much opportunity, like for everyone who's listening out there who's felt like, I wish that I had that. Like the opportunity and the manifestation is like starting to come through, but it has to be that heart-based frequency. And I think that women like you guys and like so many other groups, you know, around the world, really at this point, that are modeling those support systems, like that's going to be the new earth model, is everyone is at their own level, their own place, but there is this underlying theme of support and support for who you are. I got this email today, and I think that I got it today just like 2 or 3 hours ago out of the blue, because I was supposed to talk about it while we recorded this. And so this woman reached out to me and she said that she had just found my podcast and that she is a physicist. And that like really stood out to me because, you know, when you work in the fields, in the scientific fields, there is so often no room for the spiritual, even though they're at this like convergence point right now. But she told me that she's a physicist and she's been having her spiritual awakening over the last year. And there were many points that she questioned, like, am I crazy? Is this real? Is this happening in my head? Is it like what is happening? So she's been finding, you know, the pieces of the puzzle, as we all did, and as everyone will. We find the pieces of the puzzle, and one of those pieces was the Andromeda podcast that Alicia and I did back in November. And she said that just in the first few minutes, like everything, she felt this wave of confirmation come over her that like, you're not crazy, it is real, it is happening, and it is going to be okay. What would you guys say to the listeners out there who are all at different stages of their awakening, some of them with knowledge that surpasses me, some of them who are just like the woman in the letter today? You know, she's like, I just found your podcast, I think she said like today or a few days ago, who are figuring things out. Like, what would you say to the listeners out there who are navigating the stages of their spiritual awakening, but also navigating their 3D life? Like they have families, they have jobs, they have you know, the gym to go to. What kind of advice would you give to them if they were struggling with
Mhm.
the mesh point, really, of like where the two converge and where they meet?
I would just tell them to give themselves grace. It's a very personal journey, and you don't know what is going to come up, and just be nice to yourself in the process and know that you don't need to have it all figured out, because you may not have it all figured out. And I think that Alicia mentioned it earlier in the podcast, that the finding your balance between 3D, 5D, it's going to take some time to get into a groove that feels comfortable for you. And just if things feel comfortable, let them. And if they don't, I just would be nice to yourself in the process, because it's just a journey that you really don't know what you're in for on this ride until you're in the swing of it. And I think that would have been helpful for me to hear a few years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I would also say that this is like a time period for anyone listening to start really understanding what it is to like listen to your gut, whether like you think it's just like an inkling or like
Mhm.
anything. If you have a pull towards something, like Google it, look it up. Like you don't know what you'll find. Like you could find a book about something you've never read before, or fall down like a TikTok rabbit hole, or and always like obviously use your discernment, but I think that's really where people struggle. It's like not everything is supposed to be logical. And Sam knows, and Annie, you might know, like I love when spirituality and science like combine. Like I think that's like the way through this whole question and getting people on board. Because really, like, there are so many physicists that won't, knock what spirituality is trying to talk about because they're like, well, I mean, all the other things that we figured out were true are true. And that's kind of crazy. So, like, who's to say that these other things aren't true? Like, that's the whole point of science. So, that's why I kind of think of spirituality as like a science, and it looks different for everyone. But I think it's where like logical and really like intuition meet. And I think it's really like this place that humans as a whole are heading, right? Like this direction of being more in tune with yourself. Like being intuitive doesn't mean you're like, it's not just a thing for like women and moms, like everyone has intuition and everyone can really like follow their gut and get some downloads and just like trust what you are feeling and thinking and just like follow it because like it's already written out for you somewhere.
And I don't think that you need to also attach it or give it any type of serious meaning. Like everyone says, when you meditate, just let your thoughts just come and float through, and you don't need to hold on to any emotion or attachment to yourself with them. And I think there are a lot of thoughts that come up during this that you're like, wow, that is weird. That is crazy. And what does that mean about me? And then I am this type of person because I think this. And I don't think that that needs to be the narrative. And you can have a thought and you can be like, okay, note it, let it go.
Speaking of intuition, what is your guys's favorite part of being a woman? Like we've kind of talked about and established that we all believe that at least at this table that like we've had a lot of different past lives. I've talked a lot about my past lives and I kind of went on this like very masculine trajectory and then into a feminine trajectory, and I've been in the feminine trajectory for about like 13,000-ish years, which is not a very long time. And so there's a lot of things about like being a woman that I really struggle with, especially on this planet where we are not always very kind to women. And we walk down the street and we look over our shoulder. And, when I go to my car, I always have my keys in my hands. And like we live in a world that it just hasn't always been safe for women. But I'm curious, based on like who we are now and how much we've learned about the intersection of free will and destiny and having a purpose in being here, like what is your guys' favorite part about being a woman, like a human woman?
I think mine is in between intuition and emotion. And I think all the things that go along with it, like nurturing and just being able to like, I don't know, like read the room. Like how many women walk into a room, right? And they're like, no, something's off. And people are like, you're crazy. Like, and like so many women will stick with it and say, I know something's off. And it honestly isn't until a lot of women become like mothers where they have like this, like they're not going to let it go if they know something's wrong because now they have like this other thing to protect. But before that, you're like, yeah, maybe I'm just making it up. Like maybe it's weird. Like I'm just being weird. Like, and I think one of my favorite things is kind of turning that around and not in an aggressive way, but people who want to doubt that and just be like, well, if you practice your intuition, maybe you'll have the same sort of feeling. And if you're in touch with your emotions and what's going on around you, maybe you'll be able to see some of these things that, women every day are experiencing, and like the ability to like, reach out to someone through like just kind of feeling their energy. I think sometimes I forget that people can't do that. Like it's only like a group of people that really believe that they can do it, and most of it is full of women. And I think that's like super underrated in terms of like just humans, really. I think that's like a superhuman trait.
Mhm.
And everyone can achieve it, but I think just like women are kind of born with it. And it's sad because we're taught like not to really trust it, and it's looked at in a weird way. And I think it's slowly evolving, but um, yeah, I think it's sad when people can't feel energy and can't feel their emotions. And I think I have a tendency to, I'll use Sam's word, like kind of shove that down people's throat. Like everyone should be able to feel, and it's okay to feel, and you don't have to be embarrassed, and it's not shameful. And what's
Mhm.
wrong with just like going with what you feel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Along those lines, my favorite thing about being a woman is the vulnerability and the softness that comes when you're surrounded by your females in your life, whether that's maternal figures, sisters, friends, colleagues, when you get to break down the walls and the protections that come with a 3D world, and you get to just be around people at their core and see them come to light, and then you get to reflect that back to them. It's just such a great feeling. Like, I think the past handful of years, and honestly, most of my life, really, I've had to struggle with leaning into my divine feminine. I carried a lot of masculine traits and just very do and perfectionist. And I took on a
Mhm.
lot of those roles. And Annie, I think it was a lot, mostly through our work. Like we did a lot of work like with my sacral and tapping into that feminine, like sacred part of me. And lately, I have also been just slightly nostalgic that this time that we're in, we're never going to get again. Like it's always evolving and changing. And I've had moments recently with my girlfriends where we're just like sitting around and I'm like, this is girlhood. And it's so unique. And I think it's something unique to women that we get to just experience that side of ourselves together. And it's just so beautiful. And I love it.
No, I like have a little bit of like tear prickles. I love that so much. I love that you said vulnerability. And for me, that has been like the absolute hardest feminine trait to embody is vulnerability. I go I have such a soul history of being this warrior, and it was like you couldn't be vulnerable. Like you had to always have a shield up, a guard up, and I'm talking about like real like battles. Not just and it's hard to like let that go when you're in a place where it's like I live in the suburbs, like there is no battle going on here, like it's okay, you don't have to keep carrying that energy. And so yeah, vulnerability is it is such a it's like the gateway that opens everything up, and it's like that gateway to the intuition and to the emotions and to the entire like universe of the divine feminine. And it can be so difficult to open that gateway because it's vulnerability. It means that you might not be safe. And yeah, creating that safety, for yourself, or understanding that you can handle whatever comes up, and then in some cosmic plane, like it is safe to be vulnerable at any given moment. So thank you so much for sharing that, both of you guys. I love that. I am curious, what do you guys wish more spiritual people would talk about? What do you wish that they would talk about? What do you wish that they would discuss? And it can be anything really, from things that you don't feel like get that much attention, or like areas where you have searched or like Google searched and nothing has come up. Yeah, I'm curious, what do you guys wish that more spiritual people would talk about? Maybe Alicia wants to take that.
Yeah. I think there's a few different things, but if I'm speaking personally of things that I've looked for, and I think it's just an interest I have. I am always kind of interested in like what parts of time and what places and what things people are drawn to. And I love to kind of like dissect that and think like, where did that come from? It kind of all stems from like the past live stuff. But even, working with you, Annie, and learning that, your soul also has lives and different galaxies, other planets, like that really opens a whole other world that I think like a lot of people might be like nervous to talk about, right? Because like we don't necessarily like know what that looks like. There's no science to it. And it goes back to the whole logical thing. Um, and I have kind of like eaten up every book, like Dr. Brian Weiss's book, Many Lives, Many Masters. I mean, I could read it over and over and over because it's this doctor that finds through kind of a mistake that this woman that's in hypnosis has fallen back into many, many lifetimes, and he doesn't think it's real, but it keeps happening, and he gets these divine messages. And it just goes to show that like everyone has these different experiences. And um I've always been interested in it and how people, see that through their dreams. And I think that's kind of where I come up empty on a lot of searches, and I'm always like looking for more.
I think for me, it's and everyone's journey looks different. So it's not like there can be like a crash course manual in how to handle your spiritual awakening. But that has been an area I did struggle with when we first started. And honestly, if I didn't have Alicia to go through it with, then I probably would have been far, like not as far along on this journey because you just don't know, like the person who emailed you earlier, you do feel a little crazy and you don't know what is normal and what's not and what does this mean. And sometimes when you start to look into, like Alicia and I, we both like to research, and if I have found that there's not that always initial landing spot to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you kind of just like jump in and then it's like full blown spirituality and you're like, whoa, that's a lot. And I don't know what any of that means. Can we like talk about it in layman's terms? Because I'm confused and I'm lost and I just need a little bit of guidance. You almost need like a little like a hand holder to just lead you through the path. And I struggled with that in the beginning. And Alicia and I, we really did like we would go to each other's places and we would just sit down like with a cup of tea and we would share like like weekly updates like this happened to me, what happened to you, what do you get from this? And having someone to bounce it off of helped us make sense of it. So that would have been helpful for I think general public consumers out there.
I completely.
And I'll
Go ahead.
Oh God. I was just gonna say, I'll like add to that I think also there's like this maybe sometimes this like nervousness around like explaining things in layman's terms because like no one knows like what the right way looks like. And the only way of doing it is just like sharing your experience. And like Annie, like you've been such a great example in being vulnerable and sharing your story. And this is how it looks. And it doesn't look like this for everyone. But I don't think I've seen many other examples, especially like in social media, of how that looks. A lot of people have their spiritual awakening and then they don't give details. Like you've given so many intimate details about your spiritual awakening that it
TMI.
allows well, yeah, but it allows everyone listening to be like, oh, that could totally happen to me. Like that's totally a normal experience. And like she got this out of that. But I think a lot of people are like the opposite, where they miss that in between part of like, well, how did you get there? Because that must have been crazy and that must have like completely changed your life. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always curious, like when I find new teachers, I always want to look through their body of work and I
Mhm.
always want to like hear the story. Like, how did you get here? Like, how did you
Yeah.
become this like
Right.
reincarnated ascended master?
Yeah.
Like, tell me all the details. Tell me the roadmap. I need to know what's happening to me. I love that. And thank you because I don't feel like I'm always as vulnerable. I guess I'm not as vulnerable with probably the people that I should be, which is like my family and close
Mhm.
friends, and definitely in past partnerships, I would like run from vulnerability. And that's the interesting thing about having a podcast is that, it's like for me, sometimes it's therapy time. I just say it all. Like, I don't know where this is going, but it's just, you just kind of trust the process. And that has been time and time again what people have written to me and said, like, what I love about the podcast is like, yes, it's all this like quantum information and like, sometimes it's organized and sometimes it's chaotic, but it's that there is this element of like it just being real, and because it's been honestly like a diary for me for the past two and
Mhm.
a half years of every new thing that I learn, and I just learn as much as I can and then teach others and try to talk about it. And yeah, I think that there is a lot that others, especially, I have a pretty big chunk of the audience who are who work in the spiritual world to some degree, who have some sort of business, they're a practitioner, this or that. So I think it's really helpful for them to hear from women who don't work in that industry but who have achieved a pretty impressive level of integrating 3D and 5D, what they wish that the spiritual people would talk about more. And
Mhm.
it's always really helpful for me too, because, when you work for yourself, there's no one out there to give you feedback besides your audience. And so it is really, really helpful to just hear those things and to know that, like, that is what people are struggling with, or that's what they're Googling, that's what they're looking for. Um, and I remember back when I was starting to teach a lot of like business, someone asked me, like, what do you think a niche, like a high demand niche would be? And right away I said, we need more coaches who are just focused on coaching women, like teaching women how to navigate their spiritual awakening. And it could be men or women, but I think that's what I said, like teaching women how to navigate their spiritual awakening, because that seems to be the biggest struggle point is you wake up and you're like, what the hell is going on? And I think to some degree, someone can teach you a lot. And that has been, my podcast has really been my service as far as that direction. But yeah, the demand for having someone to hold your hand through the spiritual awakening process is so high. And I think that it is almost completely unseen by a lot of us who work in the spiritual industry. So it's absolutely there. Like, you guys hit the nail on the head with both of those. Thank you so much. And Alicia, just you wait until this episode I have coming out very soon that is going to complicate everything that you know about past and future lives, and I'm gonna just make it, it's just gonna blow your mind.
I'm ready. I'm ready for it. Any new information that's I'm ready.
It's gonna blow your mind. It adds such a
Oh
layer
no.
of complexity to it that I I have really even struggled to understand it since I learned it all through this activation with my mentor. But I digress. My last question for you guys is kind of abstract, but when I was, downloading like what this conversation should be about, the last question that came through, there was like 9 questions. And I know I asked a lot more, but there was like exactly 9 questions that came through. My last question is, what kind of world do you guys want to live in? And it's totally abstract. You can answer it however your heart guides you. Maybe Sam wants to go first.
I have a question about your question.
Okay,
Is
good.
okay, so what world do we wish to live in? Is this like a realistic world, like our 3D world, or in our brain where we go to when in our little happy place?
It could be both. Yeah.
Well, then let me do both. I think in the world I would like to live in my happy bubble brain world, that's not realistic, is just me being one with just the earth, like greenery, nature, waterfalls, just like laying on an open field, flowers, and just sunlight everywhere. That's what, when I saw your question, Annie, that's exactly what my brain thought. And I'm just like, that would be so peaceful and I would love to be there. But realistically in my day-to-day life, I would probably pull pieces from that, and I just want to live in a world where I can find peace and blissfulness and the little glimmers that just appreciating everything, all of the feelings of what Alicia talked about earlier, just like knowing that it is so cool that we get to experience all of the highs and all of the lows and just incorporating it into life and being able to take that mindset moving forward.
I think I can answer this question over several hours in many different ways. This is so hard for me. But my little bubble world would probably be Sam's little bubble world, because I feel like that just makes sense. And then we keep like our little circle in that little bubble world. And like it's sunny a lot. We live by water and the forest, and but I think in this world, my like political science degree starts to like kick in my brain when I hear this question. I think really what it comes down to is like the ability for people to be who they feel like they are. I think, it sounds a little cliche, but it's for a more harmonious world, right? Like a little more peaceful. And it would be standard to say like no war, no fighting, no killing. Obviously, that's without saying that would be lovely, but I think like we need to start with this path. I think that we've started to move down of what does like authenticity look like, and understanding that authenticity looks different for everyone. Also the ability from birth to understand that like you have a spiritual experience regardless of what your spirituality looks like. That doesn't mean that you have a specific religion. You decide when you get there, whatever that's looks like to you, and it's also always evolving. I think our societies have us pegged into little holes or trying to fit into a specific box. I think in my everyday life, I'm like consistently fighting against being put into a box or fitting into someone's image of what I want to be. And I sometimes just hope that more people would push the envelope for themselves. And I don't think that's something that everyone's, born feeling for various different reasons and the experiences they go through. But I think we'd be a lot better off if everyone felt a little more confident to be who they were supposed to be. And I think that's really an education that starts early.
Yeah. And I think it would be wonderful to have more conversations to allow for that. I called Alicia this morning and I told her I had a really, really lovely conversation with my dad last night. And we were able to just break down some barriers and speak from our heart about so many different topics. We were talking about the difference in our generations and politics and marriage and divorce and just the way that we look at the world. And it was such a great conversation because he got to see me like for me, and I was able to see him, and we were able to just like meet in the middle and just be like, oh, we were able to see each other for who we are and accept it, whether we agreed or disagreed. And I think having more of that across the board with colleagues and people that you run into in the grocery store and in the day-to-day frustrations, and all with all of that taken into account, to just have some open and honest conversations and acceptance, and know that it's okay to be different, and we don't all need to follow into the same path, and just being unique is just so human, and to just lean into it.
And I think the more that we have those conversations and the more that people feel like safe in their environments, whatever their experiences looked like before, it only takes a few times for someone to understand that, oh, well, this is fine. So if this was fine, then I can share the next thing. And then eventually they're feeling okay to be their most authentic self.
Wasn't that just a soul-stirring conversation? I want to thank Alicia and Sam again for just being so authentic and so real, and for allowing me to take the conversation in lots of different directions, both very 3D and very galactic, and to just receive from them. And it's a privilege, it's an honor to be in their presence, to receive, but also to witness them. And I am so incredibly grateful. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please give your love to Sam and Alicia in the comments. Let them know what you appreciated most, what spoke to your heart, and I will be sure to send all of the fan mail to them. You can find me every day pretty much on Instagram at I am the Wellspring. You can also check out wellspringofficial.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe if you want more of these galactic episodes, because the next one I have coming up for you guys next week is going to blow your hair back. Thank you so much again, and you already know that I will see you on the next one.